This video is important because it shows the central tension inside South Africa's migration debate. Not from outside commentary, not from a headline, but from the words of Nkosikhona Ndabandaba, a leader of Insizwa Nobunsizwa, speaking directly to Nigerian residents in South Africa. For weeks, June 30th was discussed as a deadline, a warning, and for many people, a source of fear. But in this address, Ndabandaba gives his own explanation. He says the issue is government failure. He says businesses are exploiting African migrants. He says the June 30th deadline was not a call for killing or looting. But he also says something that raises a serious question. When legal residents are told they may be placed in the same basket, where does lawful reform end and collective blame begin? We are going to play the full address first, so you can hear it in context. Some claims made in the address are allegations by the speaker. We are presenting them as part of the speech, not as independently verified facts. Then, after the full video, we will break down what it reveals about law, labour, fear, and public order in South Africa. Take a listen.
Okay. I hear you, and I respect you, and I respect that. We have a government that has purported that South Africans are the priority. And the business in South Africa that has purported that their job is to make sure that they in doing business, the country must still, maintain their economy. They're employing our brothers from Africa, they are abusing them, they're exploiting them, and they are underpaying them. That kills the economy of the country, that's why. I cannot allow a white man to employ my Zimbabwean brother and abuse him. I would rather take that Zimbabwean guy and tell him to go back home rather than allowing that. I would never allow a Muslim guy because of faith, because of their religion, to employ my fellow brothers and sisters from Malawi and abuse them and exploit them because of faith. We have a country, we have laws, and those laws must be respected. And that is why we set up this deadline of the 30th. We did not say on the 30th people are going to be killed. We did not say on the 30th the shops are going to be looted. We said government work towards this deadline. Do something about the things that we are crying about. Sort out whatever we are complaining about. By the 30th, give us a report as to what have you done since we started. Okay. That's why my movement is for men. But always women are welcome because they don't want to be left out. But my movement is about moral regeneration. You are a man, my brother. You don't have to be complimented for doing what a man does. Don't expect your wife to say, oh, you are the best husband because you are loving your kids. You are doing what you're supposed to do.
You're taking your responsibility.
I'm a man in South Africa. I pay tax. And that tax, I want to see where it's going. My tax can't go anywhere. It has to go to South Africans. And if you are coming from outside the country, come and respect the laws, abide by the laws, keep everything correct, and do your business. If you are doing business, pay taxes and everything. Now, my problem is here with you guys who are legal in the country. That is my biggest problem now. We don't see you condemning the wrongs that are done by the illegal immigrants in this country.
Are you guys listening now?
Yeah.
Are you listening now?
You see, I don't like arguments, my brother. I'm a very positive person. I live a positive life.
To the point.
I promise you, there is no problem in this world that I cannot solve. I don't like arguing. And you guys must also, my brothers, you must learn that. Stop arguing. If you attend in a room, all of you are talking at the same time, it doesn't work.
No one is talking.
I'm asking you, I'm saying to you, I have a serious problem of the legal immigrants and foreigners in this country that are supporting the illegal.
They're wrongdoing.
The illegal wrongdoings of them. We don't see you as that's why you are going to be in the same basket. We want to see you come out and condemning this nonsense. Do you know how many death threats I get? Do you think I care? I would be standing in front of you like this. I would be standing around surrounded by you like this if I cared about death. I will die one day. Even if I'm doing this or not doing this, I will die one day. And my father passed away when I was 12. He told me about death. He educated me about death. It's nothing. You are something while you are still alive. You have to do everything while you are alive. Because one day you're going to pass away. But it will be a shame to your forefathers if you were to pass away and you haven't done anything.
There's no legacy.
In my culture, during the day, if my kids are going to go and play with your kids in your house, during the day, during lunch, you can feed them. Yeah. But when you are ready to give these kids the supper, because you are a man and you have a law in your house that says your son must not come back in your house after sunset. You must chase away my son around 4:30. Tell him, go and collect the goats for your father, go and collect cows for your father, go and make sure and see that all your livestock, your father's livestock is okay before the sunset. You are not chasing him away because of the food. You are chasing him away because you are a man. You need to uphold that law in your house.
Decision.
And you need to help this son, this boy of mine, to uphold the law, my laws in my house. Because your son is my son. If I'm not there, the boy must not be comfortable to do the wrong things in front of you as a father.
I understand.
This is what we are doing in South Africa. We are saying our father now is dishing breakfast, supper and dinner to the kids from the neighboring countries. He's forgotten about us. We are trying to remind him. That's all. There is no fight. That's why my organization, you will never see violence. Yes. You see discipline 5,000 men. When I put a stick down, they all sit.
They all sit.
But that must tell you something about those men. You must respect them more than the man that walks there and say, "Hamba, hamba, hamba." We don't say that. We ask the government to correct the systems. We ask you guys to respect the laws of the country, and that's what we are standing for.
We really appreciate you. We really appreciate you. Thank you very much. We really appreciate you.
Why? We did not organize a meeting yet.
No.
But we did not organize a meeting today.
Okay. We must organize. I'm the one who stopped you. Yeah.
This man said, let's stop and have a contact.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
You need to leave tomorrow.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
The Nigerians in Durban, they are selling drugs there, and they are telling us in our faces that we are not men.
No, that's the
so you see, the reason why, if you guys remember, do you know when I started this? Do you know when I started intensifying? My campaign is 12 years old.
This campaign
is 12 years old, but,
wow,
but because I'm peaceful, nobody looks at me until I change.
Until now.
Bafowethu, I'm asking you, Bafowethu, talk to your brothers in Durban. They mustn't make those videos saying they're going to take our women, they're going to rape our children, they're going to take their land. We are getting scared when you say that. You know what I'm saying? When you do that, we are scared. We want to be proactive now and say, you know what, fuck this. If these guys are here, we have them. We've kept them in our house for 25 years, and now they are showing us the middle finger.
No, that's wrong. That's wrong. Not everyone.
That is the reason why. Otherwise, why were you staying here for so long, my brother? Why we didn't kill you for so long? If we really are killers. But you can't say you're going to take the land.
No.
You're going to put your king here when we have our country. Then you're going to see me taking the
All right. Thank you, boss. Thank you, boss.
Now let's be very careful with what we just heard. This speech matters because it contains two arguments at the same time. The first argument is a governance argument. Ndabandaba says the South African government has forgotten its own citizens. He says businesses employ African migrants, exploit them, underpay them, and use their vulnerability to weaken the economy. That part speaks to a real problem. Migrant workers can be exploited. South African workers can be undercut. Employers can abuse weak enforcement. And the state has a duty to manage immigration, labour law, borders, taxation, and public order properly. So the serious question is not whether South Africa has legitimate concerns. It does. The serious question is what happens when anger at government, employers, and weak institutions begins to move toward whole communities. That is the second argument inside the speech. When Ndabandaba says legal residents must condemn wrongdoing by illegal immigrants, or they will be put in the same basket, the logic changes. It moves from individual responsibility to collective suspicion, and that is the line South Africa must watch. If one person commits a crime, prosecute that person. If one person is undocumented, process that case through the law. If one employer exploits desperate workers, punish that employer. If Home Affairs fails, fix Home Affairs. But no nationality should be treated as collectively guilty. No legal resident should have to prove innocence because someone else who shares their nationality is accused of wrongdoing. That is how lawful concern can become social punishment. That is how immigration enforcement can become street-level suspicion. And that is how a demand for order can create disorder. There is another tension in the speech. Ndabandaba says his movement is disciplined. He says they did not call for violence. He says they are asking government to correct the system. That matters. But the real test of any civic movement is not only what it says in a formal address, it is what its message releases on the ground. Does it send anger upward toward government, employers, corruption, weak enforcement and broken institutions? Or does it send anger sideways toward Nigerians, Zimbabweans, Malawians, Mozambicans, Congolese and other African communities? That is the danger point. South Africa can demand stronger immigration enforcement without humiliating people in the streets. It can demand labour compliance without blaming exploited workers. It can protect citizens without turning legal residents into suspects. It can defend public order without allowing public fear to become collective blame. So the question raised by this address is not simple. Was this a call for lawful reform? In part, yes. But did it also reveal how quickly lawful reform can slide into collective suspicion? That is the deeper warning. June 30th was never only about documents. It became a test of whether South Africa can solve a real governance crisis without making migrant communities carry the blame for state failure. This is the South Africa file: history, power, politics, and consequences. If this kind of evidence-based analysis matters to you, like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone following South Africa's migration debate. And tell us in the comments. How can civic organisations demand stricter labour and immigration enforcement without exposing legal residents to collective street-level suspicion?